Well, thank you so much. That was a completely unique welcome. Uh, so, I am Liz Wilson, as you probably remember now, and I'm here from Karmarama. I'm the COO of Karmarama, which is a creative agency in London. So for any of you who were worried that Karmarama is the local yoga centre popped in for a strange pre-break session, it's not. And if you're thinking, God, the British Army sounds like a million miles away from the organisation I'm working with, my big bank, my big healthcare brand, don't worry. This is a story about bringing together creativity and digital and data, so hopefully something for everybody. So it's a great piece of work to show how we did that. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Karmarama first, only enough to give you a bit of background on how this piece of work works. So, we were founded in 2000. We became part of the Accenture family in 2016, in fact, part of Accenture Interactive, which is, as you all know, I'm sure, the world's largest digital agency. We are 300 people, and we have lots of different skills, capabilities, backgrounds, but the thing that holds us all together as a values-based organization is this idea. And it's, you know, we're a creative agency, so we do love stories and ideas, and this is the idea behind our business. It's in our name, it's in our brand, it's in our culture, it's in how we go to work every day. So it all comes from doing the right thing. Karma, Rama, what goes around comes around, or good works for short. So far, so kind of hippie yoga retreat. Does it actually work, and are we any good? Well, we've won a few awards over the years, and you can probably pick out on here some that you're familiar with, whether they're about creativity and craft, or performance and effectiveness. But in case you didn't spot it, this one's our favorite, and I picked this out for a couple of reasons. We are a talent business in the creative industry. Now, we're all in talent businesses nowadays, aren't we? We're all in a war to get the very, very best people. But actually, in the creative industry, it's kind of even more important because the people and the ideas that they can have literally define the quality of our product. So we live or die by our employer brand. So this is probably our proudest award ever. We've just been ranked the eighth best company to work for in the UK. So, you know, it sounds kind of easy as a creative agency. That sounds like a really cool place to work. Actually, there's only 2 creative agencies in the top 100. So we are super proud about that. And it kind of informs the piece of work I want to share with you today. So I said we have a range of talent in the business. And there's kind of 4 kinds of talent that go to make up the piece of work that I want to show you. So first of all, there's some communication talent. So these are classically brand people who understand advertising and are going to go from the brand outwards. There's a group of people who work more in the performance and digital marketing space. And those are the people who are kind of going to go from customer back or from that middle bit of the funnel when somebody's interested in the product but hasn't yet tipped over into actually using it. And then thirdly, we have our creative products and platforms business, which is where a customer goes into actual experience of the product. And finally, we have makers who are there to fulfill the vision of each of those 3 pillars. And knitting those 4 things together is where this piece of work comes from. Let me give you the theory. So here's the big theory slide about connected creativity. Now, one of the great sadnesses of being in business nowadays, or being a customer nowadays, is that our experience of a brand or a product is exactly as siloed as the organization that owns it. You know, we experience things in thin silos, in thin slices, where you can almost feel the baton pass from team to team. So here's a way of looking at a brand's world. On the right-hand side of the slide, culture. So this is the outside world. This is the domain of marketing. It's where we talk about things, where we give messages that are going to give the brand or the product a role in people's minds. On the left-hand side of the slide is consumption, where we're actually using and experiencing the product. So this is the product and experience world. This is where we are building up a role for the product or brand in people's lives. Now, those 2 things tend to be kind of disconnected, you know, 2 slightly different cycles. And where we think there's a real opportunity for brands and where we feel we can really help to add value is in this middle area. So bringing together a big, deep insight and a really granular understanding of behavior to connect up the cultural, the outside saying world and the inside doing world so that they become one self-reinforcing loop of experience. That's what we're trying to do. So you'll judge now how successful we were. Because back to the British Army. Now, this story starts a few years ago, 3 years ago. And the British Army had a bit of a problem. They had a real shortfall in new recruits into the army. And it's a funny thing, but lots of reasons why that can happen. One of the most peculiar is there isn't a war on. And when there's a war, the army gets talked about a lot, it looks really purposeful and important, and people want to join in. Similarly, over the last 10 to 20 years, the army's got smaller and smaller and smaller. So the likelihood that you know somebody in the army, you've had a direct personal experience of a family member or a friend in the army, lower and lower and lower. So the army isn't really at the front of people's minds. So they're missing out on a lot of talent, and they needed to attract a much broader, much more diverse audience. But the problem is, they're not on the radar of that audience. They've always been a very, very prestigious advertiser in the UK, interestingly. They, big, beautiful, glossy advertising, broadcast advertising, television advertising in particular. And typically, if you visualize what you think that might look like in your heads, you're probably going to get to exactly the right kind of work. Guns, tanks, macho men striding across the desert on a big adventure. And, and this works brilliantly up to a point. What it really does well is it attracts people who already know they want to be in the army. You're kind of going to get them for free anyway. So what can you do to open your arms to a much broader group and welcome in the many different skills across the UK population, but also cater to their very different mindsets and needs? Back to the theory. We talked to lots and lots of soldiers, every rank, every creed, colour, profile, life stage. And one of the things that came through again and again and again was the main emotional driver for wanting to be in the army was about belonging to something bigger than yourself. It wasn't about adventure, it wasn't about fitness, it wasn't even about jumping out of helicopters. It was about belonging, being part of something. And so we were able to take this out into culture, giving people a stronger sense of how they might belong, and then into consumption, into the actual recruitment process, which is pretty much a 9-month process from when you're leaving school to being in the army, to help different people and the different decision-making journeys they were going to be going on. So this is where the story starts. Let me show you how it came to life in the real world. So it's a truly data-first approach to tackling the whole problem, not just the communication part of the problem or the recruitment and application side of the problem. And it's, you know, it really is data first. It isn't just that the data is used in how you target and reach difficult to reach groups of people. It's in the insight, it's in the application data on which all of this was based. So the saying and the doing match, the outside messaging and the inside experience match up, and it reflects the needs of all of the different profiles of people we're now talking to. And you can get a better sense of it maybe here, where the imagery that we're using is all about teamwork, it's about kinship, it's about camaraderie, being part of something and doing something important and meaningful together. And we've moved it on over the years. So on to year 2, having laid some strong foundations about why people might want to be a part of the army, we now wanted to help get some not-so-sures over the line. So people who felt there might be a barrier to them belonging. So I'd like to be a part of it, but I'm not quite sure if it's a place for women. I'd like to be a part of it, but I'm not sure I can still be Muslim and be in the army. I'd like to be a part of it, but I'm not that fit. Is that going to be okay? And so this is the work we've done more recently.
The Army is launching a new recruitment campaign.
So again, what we're bringing together there is some very provocative broadcast advertising that kind of walks into an argument with the traditionalists who think you should be, you know, a nice, macho, tough guy, doesn't show their feelings in the army. You know, the army should have a very, you know, should be very stereotypical. And so we decided that what we would do is court a little bit of that controversy. And what we were able to do is create a lot of energy around the conversation by almost going up against some of the traditionalists and positioning the army against that world. We put the army into the middle of the cultural conversation in the outside world. So what we've got here is a lot more energy behind the campaign, and a lot more media dollars, frankly, than we could have afforded in our budget. So this is really stretching the campaign, taking it out to where people are, and putting it on the sofas of breakfast television and many news shows. In phase 3, we've continued to challenge the traditionalists, and we've kind of gone one step further. This phase now is layering in again to what happens when you belong. You're doing something that matters. And the truth in the UK at the moment is there isn't particularly a shortage of jobs for young people, but certainly there's a shortage of jobs where young people feel are meaningful, have a purpose, and make them literally want to skip to work every morning feeling like what they're doing actually matters. And so this is a phase of the campaign where we're welcoming in even more people by saying there's a place for everybody to belong in the army, and there's a place for everybody to do something that's important, whatever the traditionalists, the media might say about young people. So again, it's somewhat walking into the middle of that cultural battlefield.
spacewalk.
So it's about the Army recognising the value of young people and recognising their need for a job with purpose. And it helped us recognise something. It helped us recognise that there's a way to go beyond having a company purpose or a brand purpose to having an inner purpose, which is able to connect up everything that a company says and everything it does, so that the promise and the fulfillment actually knit together perfectly and seamlessly. And we found that this is a great way to drive transformational change from the inside out. So having an inner purpose is helping us on all kinds of talent issues, from attracting the very best to making them aspire and want to give more than they normally would in a transactional relationship, and helping them achieve being the difference between a vision statement and an actual transformation in a company. So that's the story of the Army. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope it sparks a few ideas that you might want to take into your everyday life.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Give it up all together for Elizabeth.